Hi, welcome to the next video on Excel 2016. I'm going to take a little bit of breaking away from the book and have a look at the general settings. And I'm going to, over this video and the next few videos, I want to step through some of those settings, really just to explore them. Maybe there's some helpful changes that we could make. There's sort of thing that sort of sits in the background and we never really touch them, so let's have a look at them. And the reason I'm doing this is because the book does start touching on those, and it will actually refer to some of these settings from time to time. So let's have a look at them now. So without more ado, let's move to our spreadsheet and we'll start looking at this. So here's our spreadsheet, blank as usual. I'm just going to put in a small amount of something or other, just really to keep us going. So this is a sample. Okay, that's just something that we're going to use as we look on. But the point of this video is to look at the settings. So in order to get to the settings, we have to go into the file option up here, which takes us back to the kind of intro page, as it were, and if you like, all the fundamentals. And in fact, it's down here under options. So if we click under options, we get the options panel, and we're going to look at general, simply look at general in this video. So let's work down these options that are sitting under general. We'll have a look at all the other options a little bit later. First of all, it's looking at the user interface option. And we're using multiple displays. I'm really going to ignore these. This is simply optimization, so don't worry too much about that. So the first one I want to look at is this Show Mini Toolbar on Selection. So the first question is, what is a mini toolbar? Well, let's cancel that and let's go up here and let me select that text. So I'm editing that text, and you can see that I get this little thing up here. That's my mini toolbar. So it allows me to do certain things with the text as I edit it without having to kind of search around and go up here. Arguably, it's not giving you that much benefit, but it's simply when I right click, I get it anyway as well, along with another menu. So I can remove that. So let's go back into the options. I'll remove it and see what effect it has. But as part and parcel of doing that, let me actually say there is an alternative way of getting to the options. Instead of going to File and Options, I can click down here. Now you'll notice it's grayed out, there's more commands, and that's because I've got something selected. So if I move it so it's off, so there's nothing in here, okay, and I click on here, the more commands is available. So sometimes this can actually be easier. It gives me straight in, and I just click on General and I'm back where I started. So like so many things, as we've already commented, there's more than one way in which to do it. So let's disable this Show Mini Toolbar. Okay, so I'll do that and I'll OK it. We'll come back here, we'll double click on this, and there is no mini toolbar. Now notice if I right click, I still get it. So you may feel that removes a little bit of clutter. Depends how much you use this editing mechanism, but it's an option. Okay, so let's go back, look at more commands, general. I'm actually going to put it back. It doesn't worry me one way or the other. So that's the Show Mini Toolbar selection. What about this Quick Analysis option on selection? What does that mean? Well, let's have a look at this. If I select all these four and let go, I get this little thing here, and this is my Quick Analysis. If I click on it, it just gives me certain options. Now actually, if you start using these, they can be quite useful. But if you don't use it, you might feel it gets in the way, and sometimes when you're doing quite detailed work on a spreadsheet, this can get in the way. So if we go back here again, I can disable that one. Okay, and now if I select that, I don't get this little box down here. Still got the right click options, which gives me all of the big menus, but I don't get that little quick view, quick analysis option. Now, again, whether that's a benefit or not is up to you to decide. Once again, I'm going to put it back because it doesn't worry me at the moment. So we've looked at the mini toolbar, we've looked at quick analysis. The next one is enable live preview. And this is partly why I've created this text. What is live preview? Well, live preview is where when you make a change or when you're working through the possibility of making a change, that change will be visible. So let me take as an example the font. I'm going to look at changing the font. So as I do these, notice that the text over on the right changes with the font. So if I move it off there, this little font, go back to here, this is semi-italic. If I come down here, let's have a look at Algerian. Can you see Algerian down there? That looks different enough. There's Algerian, Arial back, black, Arial. So it's actually changing simply as I look. And if I come off and do nothing, it goes back to the way it was. That is live preview. Now, that's going to be true with all sorts of changes that I make. If I look at changing the background color, if I look at changing the font color, it does it dynamically as I research it. Now, if you're doing a lot of work and really going through options quite rapidly, you may feel that that gets in the way. And if that's the case, you can turn it off. So again, let's go up here. Let's disable, enable live view. We'll do that. We'll do the same test again. We'll go through the fonts and notice it's not changing. I actually quite like this option of live preview, so I'm going to put it back as well. Notice the settings that I've got are pretty much settings out of the box. I haven't changed them. Now this next one is quite interesting, probably more interesting than the others, although it depends on your point of view. The best way of showing this is to actually enable it. So I'm going to enable this collapse the ribbon automatically, and I'll show you what effect it has. So okay, so on the surface there is no effect whatsoever, but I'm going to grab the bottom left hand corner of the spreadsheet and I'm going to slowly bring it up, okay, and notice that suddenly the ribbon disappears. If I bring it back down again, it will come back. So there's a certain critical size where it decides, this is too small for the ribbon, so I'll get rid of the ribbon. So that's what that option gives you. If I now go back and I disable it, collapse the ribbon automatically so it doesn't collapse, and I do the same thing, I'll now reduce the size and notice it's still staying where it is. Actually, if I make it small enough, it does still disappear, but everything disappears. Right, but it has to be very small for me to do that. Okay, so there's a kind of interim stage where you can choose whether the ribbon would diminish or not. Now remember, in normal use even, you have the freedom to stop displaying the ribbon just by clicking that little arrow there. And the only way you can get it back is to click on one of the options and then pin it. Well, I say the only way. There's probably plenty of others and we may come across that. But that's what I find is the easiest way. So you can actually get rid of the ribbon semi-permanently. It's still available to you by using these top tab options as a kind of menu item. And if you don't pin it, if you leave it off but don't pin it, it really does function almost like a menu. So you can still use these, but then when you've done what you've got to do, let's put bold on that square, and you come back to the spreadsheet, you lose it again. So you've got various options with the ribbon, but this other option that's in the settings is something unique to sizing. Only valuable if you tend to resize your windows fairly frequently and you want to keep maximum space available. So that's your settings for the user interface. I'm going to leave that off for now. Oh, and then we have one more option, which is this screen tips. So again, we have to ask the question, what are screen tips? Now, let's have a look at these screen tips. And I've got, I found one that was actually quite good, but I've lost it. So the screen tips are really simply that you can hold, if you hover your mouse over these options, sorry, mine aren't working, which is interesting. Let's have a look at what commands I've got here. Oh, well, that's because I've got don't show them. Right. So let's set them back to show features, feature descriptions. That is the default. Show feature descriptions in screen tips. Okay. So what this means is if I hover the mouse over there, you get this box here, which tells me all about it. Some are more complex than others. I had a really good one set up for this, and it seems to have disappeared. Don't know which of these tabs it's actually in. But with some of them, you can get a lot more complex than others. But that's them. So they give you quite a lot of information. They tell you what it is. They give you quite a lot of information, and sometimes they'll give you additional. There's even some that have got quite graphical elements to them as well. Okay, so that's a screen tip. So if we go into the settings, we actually have multiple options relating to screen tips. So one of them is simply show them. The other one is don't show feature descriptions. Now, what does that mean? So I've selected that second option, and now when I go up here, all you get is a very brief explanation of what that option will be. So some of the text, you remember there was quite a lot of text with some of these, they've all gone. And if there were any other things, there was one of them was something you could click on and it would open a kind of help page. That's gone. The other option under the screen tips is simply not to show them. And we've already seen what happens then. Nothing. Basically nothing happens. Don't show the screen tips. Now if I hover over them, doesn't do anything. So if they get in your way, you know, if you're happy you know what all these things do and they get in your way, you can actually clear that out. And it's one less thing popping up, getting in the way. So there we have all the user interface elements. Let's look at the next section then. It says when creating new workbooks. Now, this very simply allows you to change the way the spreadsheet starts. So let's change this from body font to Algerian. Now I'm choosing Algerian because it's very visibly different. And I'm also going to make the font size bigger. I'm going to make it 16. Okay, so we'll just do those two for now. Okay, so I'm going to select that and it will give me a message saying, well, you can't see it in fact, but it actually says that I have to restart before that will take effect. So I'm going to close this spreadsheet. I'm not going to save it. And I'm now going to reopen Excel and go into the spreadsheet. And look how big these boxes are. And if I now start typing, sure enough, it's in this Algerian font. So it's, now Algerian is not likely to be the font that you would choose, but in fact I am going to reset this. So let's go back up. Let's get rid of that, go back up, more commands, general. Now I'm actually going to change it, but I'm not going to change it back to body font. I'm actually going to change it to Arial because I quite like Arial. So I'm going to get it so that it will always, rather than, I think if you leave it at body font, it always starts at Calibri or something, which I think is one of Microsoft's own. I will set this back to 11. So we're back to the way we were. So let's OK that. I get the message again. So let's close this again. Don't save. Reopen Excel. And hey presto, I've got the size that I want. And now when I do this, you'll notice that I'm in Arial. Okay, so I'm a happy bunny. Let's have a look at some of the other options on the command thing now. We're still in general. We're looking at creating new workbooks. The view, you can choose when you start up to change your view. So normal view, page break view, page layout view. You can see what these look like simply by going into view. It's these views here. So page break view is probably not very helpful because it's seeing how things fit together. It's a very small view. The page layout view is more useful. It's what it will look like on the page when you see it. You might not like that. You can change these views manually, but in fact when you go into this option, it's what you will start with by default. I'm going to leave mine in normal view and I'm not going to try that. What I do want to do though is actually start with 3 spreadsheets rather than 1. So if I select that, close it and open it again, it won't have changed anything much, but notice down here I've now got 3 sheets, which is how traditionally Excel, the older versions of Excel automatically started with 3 sheets. You could start with more. And in fact, arguably, if you knew that you had a project where you needed a large number of sheets, you could actually, even if it's only temporarily, you could change the option to many sheets. So you could change this option to a very large number of sheets, close it and open it, and it would have created them all for you. Saves you a lot of time. So we've had the user interface options, and this is about startup. There's then personalize. You can change your name. So if you're missing a middle letter, for example, you could add it there, or if I wanted to make it Len Clark rather than Leonard Clark, I could change that. Not entirely sure what this option means. Always use these values regardless of sign into Office. My guess is that if you've got multiple users on your PC and you've set up Office so it's available for multiple users, that would actually ensure that it's used for everyone. That would only be useful in a business if the username is a business name rather than an individual's name. The next thing you can change is the Office background, and there are quite a lot of options there, but I spent quite a lot of time trying to work out how you would see this, what this means. And in Excel, it doesn't seem to be visible. I've looked on, I've done Google searches as well, and no one seems to, now they all talk about changing the Office theme, and the options on the Office theme are limited, although you can actually bring additional Office themes into play. But it's pretty obvious what the change of Office theme will do. I can make a dark theme, I can make a light theme. You can make fancy themes. But Office background, I couldn't see any point, so I'm not going to go into that. So let's move down to privacy settings. The privacy settings are really all about settings that were there when you installed Office, but you might like to look through this and read it carefully. The first one is about required diagnostic data. There's nothing you can do about that. There is a certain amount when you install Office, Microsoft will automatically get. But there's additional diagnostic data, and it says that they want it. Now, depending on the options that you selected when you installed Office. This may or may not be selected at the moment. So if you did select it when you installed Office, you can now deselect it so that you don't send additional information to Microsoft, or vice versa. You've then got a couple of other elements that are really about online activity. And again, if you're not happy with Microsoft basically getting access to your system, you can deselect these. But read the words carefully, think about it. It does, in some cases, limit what you can do with Excel and Office generally anyway. So those are the privacy settings, and they're worth having a look at. So we're now into the final group of options under General, and this is Startup Options. Why they didn't put that with creating new workbooks, I don't know, because that's effectively Startup, although New would have activated those. So it first of all says choose the extensions you want Excel to open by default. So this is things like Excel, XLS and XLSX. This doesn't really work. If you click on it, it will tell you where you need to go in the Windows world to actually set it up, which in fact is through the settings option, the Windows settings option. So I'm not going to bother with that. And usually it sets up the default extensions fine. So I'm going to leave that one. It then says, tell me if Microsoft Excel isn't the default program for viewing and editing spreadsheets. Well, that's ticked by default. If you aren't using any other Office software, then it's pretty much irrelevant because it's the only one. And you won't be using some other program as the default. If you do use other Office software, if you use LibreOffice or one of the very cheap options, you decide whether you want it to tell you that it's not the default when you start it up. I would suspect if Microsoft Office is your prime Office, then you're happy to have this ticked. If it isn't your prime Office and you're using something else, but you have actually got it installed and you use it occasionally, I suspect you want to untick it. And it's as simple as that. This last option is actually quite interesting. Let me restart. Let's cancel this. I'll OK it, in fact, because I can't remember what I changed. Let's close that and then restart Excel. But note what we're doing. When I restart Excel, I get this front screen, which allows me to choose to load existing spreadsheets, or in fact to load various I don't know what you'd call these, but little tutorials, or indeed to go for a blank screen. And that's the default setting. If I go up again to my general options and I get rid of that show the start screen, okay, let's now close it and open it again. And when it opens, it goes straight into the spreadsheet, the default blank spreadsheet. So again, you might be happy to actually start in that way, and that way you can kind of get rid of this slight pain of the start screen. Okay, so that's the first main option within Excel options. We're going to look at some of the others in future videos. But for now, that's something that you can look at, think about, and maybe even change in your video, in your version of Excel.